So hello, I'm Justin Pipple, and I'm going to talk about UDL learning. So after watching the video and reading the article, UDL's intent is to apply it with intent. So you got to have variability with your lessons. For instance, you don't want to just have direct instruction and give a worksheet, and give a quiz. You want to get them engaged, have them explore something, give them that terminology that they can then use to apply it in new ways, and then so that could be using technology that would fulfill one of, I think it's UDL 9.2, using multimedia. That's just one I got off that I thought of in the engagement part. You also got to know your environment. So these assumptions of learning, you could be in an urban area, a special ed class, or an AP class. Your AP class will be way different than a freshman science class. So you'll have to change the way your teaching is to what your students are, and you'll have to see how they react to what you're teaching, and you can modify it based on that. So every student has a different pathway of learning. And designing for the average designs for no one. For instance, like I said earlier, direct instruction does not work for everyone. It works for very few people. It's been proven that. And so getting on to then using broad standards and modifying them to help student learning. So in science, we have the next generation science standards. And mine that I've been using is middle school or science standards. Develop and use a model of the Earth, Sun, and Moon system to describe cyclic patterns of lunar phases, eclipses of the Sun, and the seasons. So I focused on seasons and lunar phases. And there are other categories involved with it. So there's science and engineering practices, where you're developing and using these models to predict phenomena and design systems. So you're developing and using a model to describe the phenomena that you're observing. There's disciplinary core ideas, where you're exploring the different patterns of the moon, and you're observing, describing, and predicting, and you're explaining these with models. So it keeps coming back to this whole model idea. Then there's cross-cutting concepts, where these patterns can only be used to identify cause and effect relationships. So there's a relationship with the sun, earth, and the moon. And as an instructor, I have to be able to explain this relationship to my students and get them to develop a model to better understand these lunar phases and how seasons work. So this is where I'll use different techniques to help my students master the content. So getting into applying UDL to my lessons. My placement is at the West Michigan Academy of Arts and Academics up in Spring Lake. And it's an arts-based school. So they do a lot of projects there, which is a very good way to help see what students are learning. Have them show you with a project like a poster or booklet or whatever, show what they learned from the content that you taught to them. So, and actually, going off the article, I've actually kind of used the 4 lesson components pretty closely. So goals or objectives. Every day I put down a learning target and success criteria. The learning target can be something like, what are the different moon phases? I'll kind of stick with moon phases throughout this talk. And then the success criteria could be something like, develop a set of notes to better understand the different moon phases. Just something like that. The next would be assessments. So those could be diagnostic, where I'm having them show me their prior knowledge of moon phases. And that would help me to know where they are at, so I can modify my lessons to better help my students learn, so I can see where they're at and where they need to be. Another one would be formative, such as doing a worksheet, I guess, would be, or an exit slip, or a warm-up activity, just to get them thinking about it, and for me, again, to see where they're at. The final one would be a summative. It could be a quiz, a test, or a project. Next component is methods. So science teaches, they're pushing us into it now, and it's really shown to help with student learning, and is the 5E learning cycle. First one, engage, where you're getting at the student's prior knowledge, so you're getting them to ask questions, and you want them to get interested on the topic. The next one is explore, where they could be investigating data, or using different models to show something. Next one would be explain, and that can be, doing a little bit direct instruction. You're introducing that new terminology. You're putting those concepts together and developing a really guided set that they can follow. The next one is elaborate. They're using these new concepts or new terminology and vocabulary that they learned in the explain and applying it to a new situation. Could be a project, could be a worksheet. And the final one is evaluate. Normally there it'll be a project, a quiz on your lesson, or a test on a unit or a lesson. And the last component is materials. So this could be a worksheet. At my placement, they have Cornell Notes, which is a guided set of notes. At the top, they have an essential question, like an overall concept, and then down their page, they have notes, and on the other side, they do illustrations to help guide the learning. Other materials could include internet or something, like using their Chromebooks and stuff. So combinations I've actually made already. I was teaching seasons, and I'd gotten through the notes part of it, and I had them do a worksheet on it. And the next day we went over that worksheet, and I noticed they didn't really get where I wanted them to be, where I thought they should have been. So I actually went back and I did an activity that was more hands-on, that they could physically spin an Earth to see, okay, here's what the Earth looks like at June 21st. Here's what it looks like December 21st. So it's a difference between winter and summer solstice. And then it also shows how many hours of daylight that spot of Earth would get. So we took a step back and used more of a visual model to help them understand better how seasons occur and what goes on with that. And now I'm doing moon, and I've had them use physical models of the sun, moon, and earth to show what they're thinking about the relationship between the three. So as I'm going through, I can see where they're at, and I can make further accommodations for the whole class or certain students to better guide their learning so that they're all understanding what I want them to get out of it. So going back in the semester, actually, I had picked out a web resource that modeled moon phases, but this one showed satellite pictures of the moon. And after going through that, I kind of thought, they might be really confused because at the time, they don't understand that moon phases happen because of our perspective from Earth and the sun illuminating the moon. Instead, like I said earlier, I would have them explore with the moon phases with the models to show me what they know about it. And I go from there, and then I have them demonstrate. Then I demonstrate the moon phases. So what we did was we went on stage, and I had a heat lamp I had a stick with a model of a moon on it, and I had the students sit in the center of the stage, and they're the Earth. And what I would do is I would revolve around them, being the moon, and they would observe the different phases that occur. And they can see that relationship. Okay, the sun is here. We are the Earth here, and here's the moon. Now, what is happening? So this also kind of feeds into my accommodations for students, and for students with special needs too. So I also created a guided handout showing the different moons going around the Earth, and what they had to do was draw in the part of the moon that was not illuminated, or what we don't appear to see at night in these different moon phases. So they could easily fill it in, and then afterwards we'll go over these answers. I'll show them, okay, you have this, now this is what it really looks like. And for students who do need a little extra assistance, I could give them a clean answer key, and so they can compare what they got to what they could have gotten, or what they should have gotten, I guess. Other accommodations, I guess, throughout my unit for students with special needs is I can give them extra time on worksheets and projects, because I have them do quite a few projects. I find that they can better show their understanding. But if I give them extra time, they don't feel rushed on it. They can put more effort into it. And, they can easily get them a copy of the notes. So if they're not able to take the notes in class, I'm able to give it to them, and they can use it to help study and work on the worksheets and projects. All right, thank you.